Okay, Assalamu alaikum. So, oh boy. Okay. Let me be a munshid, right? Right, okay. Here you get the top. So you see it, note the difference in the sound quality. But I can see you now. I'm looking into a mic. Right, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I have a presentation. If you want me to give a presentation, I'll have to load it up on the computer. Or I could just talk about it. And you could ask questions if you like. I leave that up to you, which you'd prefer. I don't know what. Okay, I'll leave it to you. I can upload it here. I have my trusty USB, so it's on here. Just in terms of the questions that were asked to Mufti Sahib, it comes back to what I actually said in the morning plenary session, which is that every single one of the questions that you asked has a classical precedent. None of those questions are new. Right? Patches on your arm for medicine, same ruling as bandages. Right? And at what point is it required? What point isn't it required? The other questions that were asked, every single question has a classical precedent. And that is why it is important that you ask the questions properly, and that the ulama who then advise on those questions are looking through the tradition, the scholarly tradition, in order to find answers. So then we have a rich tradition, mashallah. It's important that we understand that. Sometimes you think you have to go back to Quran and Sunnah and derive the rulings directly, because these are all modern questions. You'd be surprised. Remember that going back to the Quran and Sunnah and deriving rulings is a bit like you having studied anatomy and physiology, right? Because the Quran is like anatomy and Sunnah is like physiology, right? So you've studied anatomy and physiology, and I now ask you to perform brain surgery. Now, technically, you know how to do it, because you know the anatomy, you know the physiology, right? Would you feel comfortable doing it? Would you feel comfortable even after studying all the rest of medicine, but not having actually trained under surgeons and experienced what it's like in the field? What happens when you get a bleeder? What happens if you don't have this piece of equipment, right? That's the training that ulama have as well. It is not just about studying anatomy and physiology. It's about studying everything that goes with it, and then practically applying it to case after case after case, first under guidance and supervision, and then slowly more and more by yourself. Okay, barakallahu feekum. But I congratulate Mufti Sahib. I said here, some tough questions came his way, and I think he tackled them very well, mashallah. So did you decide yet whether you wanted me to give the presentation or just to talk? Talk. We're going to do it like the House of Commons in you know how they take votes in the House of Commons, right? They don't actually do numbers. They just say, those in favour say yay. Yay. Those against say nay. And whoever's is the loudest, that's how it's passed. That's just genuinely. And there are only very few times that they will literally take a vote. Most of the times it's yay and nay. So you all said yay, so I'll talk. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. I've been asked to talk, and it's so lovely to see so many of you at a spiritual stream. This is usually this is the kind of the relegation battle of sessions. So it's so lovely to see all of you here, mashallah. The topic I've been asked to speak about is Islam and mental health, and I much prefer, believe it or not, I know that you've heard me a few times now, but believe it or not, I do much prefer a dialogue rather than just talking. I know it may be difficult to believe. So I'm going to start off. Why is this important? Why is the relationship between Islam and mental health important? Let me preface that by asking another question. There's not only psychiatrists here, obviously, and mental health care workers here, all right? How many of you think that you deal with a patient's mental health when they come to your clinic? Yeah? Fascinating that a lot of the ladies are putting their hands up and not many of the guys are putting their hands up, which is just, I don't know what to say about that. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, I believe, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى.
Men are dealing with their wives' mental health.
Allahu Akbar, mashallah. And I must say, I could not possibly comment on that. Although that's important. That is important, actually. And self-care as clinicians is very, very important. right? To look after our own psycho-spiritual health and understand what affects that. In the books of law, there is a topic buried deep within the books of fiqh called adab al-qadi. Okay, and it is the adab of, you know, how a qadi should conduct themselves when they are issuing rulings, seeing witnesses, taking testimonies, and so forth. Right? A qadi is a judge. So what are the rulings of being a judge? And there are some very interesting rulings, such as a qadi should not issue a ruling if he is hungry or tired or irritated or upset and so forth. In other words, a qadi should be in a temperamentally balanced state before they issue a ruling that affects the lives of other people. And there is a general lesson to be learned from that, that if we ourselves are not stable, how do we bring stability to others? How many times have you not really listened to a patient because something's happened at home, or this is going on, or that's going on, and you're off your game today? You know, it happens a lot. And so actually, yes, one's spouses, he says, gender neutral term, one's spouse's health, mental health, the relationship that we have with them, what's going on with our own children and so forth. Learning how to leave those, either deal with those things or leave them at the door, is very important, in order that it's part of the adab of the, not the qadi, but the tabib. Yeah? How to ensure that our own issues do not have a knock-on effect on the people that we are treating and managing. All right? Now, when I do this, when I speak about this topic, and I talk about Muslim mental health, and I usually make things difficult, and I say, there are assumptions in each of those three words. What do you mean by Muslim? What do you mean by mental? And what do you mean by health? And each of these three topics is worth elaborating and considering. From our perspective, and I touched on it in the plenary session, let's go backwards. Health. Okay? What do each of you understand in your own professions about what health is? What is health? What does it mean to be healthy? Is it the absence of tissue pathology? Because that's what the medical model is. The medical model is a reductive model, right? You can break the organism down into organ systems, the organ systems into organs, the organs into tissues, the tissues into cells, etc., etc. The deeper you go, the more reductive you get. You find the problem, you treat the problem, you work up from there, you sort this bit out, it sorts out at the cellular level, which sorts out the tissue level, which sorts out the organ level, which sorts out the organism. Now, and that is how we are trained to do medicine. All right? And what do we do well? Where does it work well, this medical model? Surgery. Works brilliantly in surgery, right? Infectious medicine works brilliantly in infectious medicine. Find the pathogen, the ghaib, you deal with the ghaib, you know that, right? You are dealers in the ghaib, in the unseen. You literally peer into people's bodies, right? You use microscopes and detect invisible pathogens. Imagine how weird it would sound to you if I said to you that there are invisible forces acting upon you. Sinister, invisible forces that have invaded your body and that are causing disease and illness, but you can't see them. But yet they are causing disease and illness and so forth. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? Hostile aliens have taken over my body, doctor. That sounds like something that should come to me, right? But that's just bacteria. That's viruses. Before Louis Pasteur looked into a microscope and found gram-positive, or whoever it was, gram-positive and gram-negative bacterial strains, this would have been the stuff of science fiction and conspiracy theory. We deal in the unseen. You deal with small things. And yet there are things that we're really good at dealing with, and things that, let's be honest, we're not that good at dealing with. Somebody said to me once, "Oh, you psychiatrists, you don't actually cure anybody. Yeah, you just kind of help people get along, just drug them up." And I said, "You physicians do exactly the same thing. I mean, when was the last time you cured someone's hypertension exactly? When was the last time you cured their diabetes? You do the same thing. You just help them get along. And when you start talking about chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease, these sorts of conditions, and which were previously dismissed as, oh, they're just making it up, it's all in their heads and so forth. And now possibly there are really complex neuroendocrine hormonal mechanisms that are bringing about these things that involve whole body systems, things that are not located in one spot. It's not one cellular dysfunction, it is a dysfunction of communication within the body and so forth, signaling within the body and so forth, autoimmune conditions, these types of things. We don't do these things that well. And the reason is that the entire system that we have is designed to be reductive. Go deeper, 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 deeper. Find the problem, sort the problem, and then up, 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 up it goes. As opposed to whole body systems. And we need to recognize that that is a deficiency of medicine that we will probably, as time goes by, hopefully, learn about the complex mechanisms of the body and do these things better. Why is this important? What does it have to do with mental health? So your mind. Your mind, well, what is it? So what is health? I asked that question, right? What does it mean to be healthy? Second question, what's your mind? I mean, what actually is it? What does mental mean? To do with the mind, to do with the mentos, not the Mentos, those are sweets, but the mentos is the mind. What is it? And what do you think it is? I ask psychiatrists this question. What do you think that you treat? Oh, the mind. Where's that? And what is it? Is it brain? Clearly, it's linked to the brain, but how is it linked to brain? What is the exact pathology that is occurring in schizophrenia? Or in depression? Or in anxiety? What's the pathology you're treating? There was a Royal Congress of the Royal College of Psychiatrists Congress last year, and they invited, I thought very bravely, a quite eminent psychiatrist who presented her research on why the serotonin hypothesis has no evidence to back it up, basically. In other words, depression is not caused by a serotonin imbalance at the level of the synapses. Hands up if you thought serotonin was the cause of depression. So, it was very interesting. She presented this paper in front of 500 psychiatrists. 500 psychiatrists. And there was a, very genial and collegiate and gentlemanly back and forth, but not a single person in that room, not one single person in that room contradicted her basic thesis, which is that depression is not caused by a chemical imbalance at the level of the synapse. Yeah? And yet, what do you tell your patients? Oh, you don't have enough serotonin in your synapses, so we're going to give you a medication that increases the amount of serotonin in your synapses, right? Yeah? Between the 6 inches of your cranium sits the most complex structure in the universe. Literally. Your brain is the most complex structure in the known universe. Your brain is 100 trillion connectome. Right? People sometimes talk about the heart has its own brain. You've heard that, right? The heart has its own brain. Very, very popular thing. Oh, the heart has a neural system that kind of, the neurons talk to themselves and so on and so forth. MashaAllah. Very true. That is a 50,000 neural connectome. There are 50,000 connections, approximately, in the heart, right? That's about the size of the brain of an earthworm. Your brain, 100 trillion neural connections, and it's fizzing about, and it is a miracle that it operates off less energy than is required to power one of these lights. So your brain operates at different levels. There is the level of neuron synapse. There is the level of neural loops, neural feedback loops that occur in localized areas of the brain. Then there is the interconnectivity of different parts of the brain to each other. And then you have all of that coming together in a singular sense of identity, the I. And what you mean by mind is the I. I. When you say I, what you're referring to is your conscious experience. That's your mind. That's what your mind is. And the thing that when we talk about mental health, this is what we're trying to deal with. How to bring a sense of afia to that subjective sense of I. Now that subjective sense of I is the tip of the iceberg of the functioning of your brain. So you have no conscious sensation or control over the regulation of your heartbeat, of glucose level, micro fluctuations of glucose in your blood, all dealt with quite happily back here. You guys know this better than me, right? Quite happily dealt with here. We never even think about it. Okay? It is only a part of the function of your brain that you are experiencing as your conscious self. Is that sufficient to explain that the fact that you experience amusement when a funny joke is told, i.e. a sophisticated complex emotion? No, because the mind is not only the tip of the iceberg of the functioning of the brain, it is also the tip of the iceberg of the functioning of the soul. So what mind is, from an Islamic perspective, is the interface of one aspect of your soul and one aspect of your brain coming together to create this subjective unified sense. And it is the soul that brings the sense of unity to the functioning of the brain, the sense of I. And this is what the Muslim part of it is. When you say Islamic or Muslim mental health, what are we actually talking about? We are talking about the metaphysical givens that undergird all of the biology. We cannot explain consciousness. Consciousness, which is the most fundamental quality of living things. We cannot explain the nature of consciousness without reference to God, without reference to an unseen reality. Okay? If you want more information, I've got hardly any time left. If you want more information about this, I have a very lengthy book chapter, which was meant to be 8,000 words long and ended up being 28,000 words long, on exactly this question. What is health? What is life? What is mind? And how does religion fill in the gaps that medicine cannot fill? Because when medicine comes to an end, its explanatory end point, that is where religion picks up. That is where religion picks up the slack and provides the ultimate answer to the unanswered questions of medicine. Why is health a good? And what does it mean to be healthy? What is the mind that we are seeking to help treat or manage in terms of depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth? And why does it go wrong in the way that it does? And what is the way back? So religion is not simply an accoutrement to the practice of medicine. It is not simply about adab and about ethics as a doctor. Religion fundamentally, and as I say, I'm not going to explain the however many 1,000-word article. Medicine fundamentally fails to explain its own purpose. It cannot explain its own purpose. It is religion that provides the answers to the questions that medicine cannot. And nowhere is this more apparent than in mental health, when you are dealing with the most complex human structure imaginable. The questions are innumerable and unanswerable unless you bring the notion of the soul in relation to God. How do you understand the nature of the human? The human cannot be, the abd cannot be understood without reference to the Rabb. Without reference to the Rabb. Rabb and abd. رب العالمين إياك نعبد. And I'll finish with this, and this is just general advice. Obviously there's a lot more can be said about this. I have said a lot more in other places as well. The general advice is this: every single thing in your life, everything you experience, everything that you go through, everything that you do, returns to 4 fundamental principles. Those principles are God, self, the relationship between God and self, which is called rububiyyah. He is the Rabb, rububiyyah, and the relationship between self and God, which is called ubudiyyah. Everything you experience is coming from Allah as part of His growing of you. The word Rabb does not simply mean Lord, it means cultivator, it means grower. Like your parents are your Rabbs because they raise you. Every single thing you experience is part of the rububiyyah Allah provides to you to grow you. And every single thing you put forth is a response to that expression of rububiyyah, and that is called ubudiyyah. And there's only one more thing to understand, that I draw it like a heart. There is Allah, that is rububiyyah to you, and there from you to Allah, that is ubudiyyah. And in between that heart there is an arrow. There is an arrow. And the arrow is the shaitan. And the arrow breaks both of those 2 lines. It breaks both of those 2 lines. The line from God to you. Shaitan seeks to disrupt your experience of rububiyyah with one simple question, which is why? Why did it happen? It's not fair. And shaitan thereby seeks to disrupt your ubudiyyah by saying, why? Why should I? What's the point? What is it all for? What do I benefit? So the whole journey of the human is the healing of the heart. Watch my fingers. The whole journey of the human is the healing of the heart. How you interpret what happens to you as coming from a merciful Lord without the disruption of the disruption of the shaitan, and how you bring forth beauty, and you bring forth beauty in the form of worship, and that without the disruption of the shaitan, your selfishness and the instigation towards selfishness and so forth, which is how you make your heart whole. Because psychiatry literally means to heal the self, to heal the soul. I am actually a soul doctor. Allah make it easy. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khairan to Dr. Asim Yusuf for a beautiful talk. I'm glad we chose that it was a talk and not a presentation.